Hello everyone! Some of you probably noticed that I have not uploaded a September Reads video yet, and you might be thinking I forgot about it, and I kinda did, but once I did remember, I realized I didn't want to film a September Reads video because I realized that I do not like these monthly wrap-ups anymore. I just feel very pressured to read a certain amount of books in a month, and the actual process of filming those videos at the end of the month, I was never really happy with how I talked about the books that I read because I've always had this struggle to actually come up with things to say about the books that I read. Some books are just okay. I didn't love them, I didn't hate them, and I tried this thing where I only actually talked about the books that I had something to say about, but I didn't like the structure of that kind of video that I did. I'm gonna try something similar, that I'm only gonna talk about the books that I actually have something to say about. And I thought about not mentioning the other books at all, but I think I'm still gonna mention them like at the end and what rating I gave those books. But other than that, I'm not gonna talk a lot about a lot of books because I probably won't have a lot to say about a lot of books. I'm just gonna get started and you'll see how I'm gonna do this from now on. Maybe I'm gonna try this out. So I'm not doing monthly wrap-ups, I'm gonna call them like recent reads, and then maybe I'll list some of the books that I talk about in the title, or just do recent reads number 1, number 2, and so on. If you have any suggestions for this whole new process, leave them down below. I'd really appreciate that because I'm still figuring out things myself. So depending on what you would like to see or how you would like me to do certain things, leave it down below. The first book I'm going to talk about is Interface by Lucy Mihajlic. I read this at the beginning of September, so it's been quite a while now. Interface takes place in it feels like our near future. I don't remember what year it takes place, but it feels like it could happen. It's something that could happen to us very soon. In Interface, technology has advanced quite a bit from where it is right now. Interface is this technology firm product thing which I compared to Apple. So Interface is something like Apple, but a lot more advanced and even bigger. Everyone uses Interface, and this is the point where I tell you that links to these books' Goodreads pages are down below because I suck at summaries. I just had a quick look at the Goodreads summary, and there are 2 sentences that explain a lot about this, and it's people have always searched the internet for answers, now they actually worship it. That's a big part of this, that people actually worship the internet. That's the status that the internet has in this book. The plot is it was a bit confusing to me. For the longest time I didn't realize what the plot of this book was gonna be. Our main character Pen is on a pilgrimage to Interface's like main store thing when she is kidnapped. The reason I wanted to read this book is because it was recommended for having an asexual character, and I found it while I was looking for books for Diversity Bingo to read, so I was very interested in this. This book was very confusing when I started it because the technology was so advanced and it took place a bit in the future. There was a lot of lingo that didn't make sense. You really have to figure out what things mean. I have to say I was close to DNFing it, but I was really excited for this book and I really wanted to like it. So I pulled through and I ended up enjoying it. And once I thought about it, I realized that it was kind of a satire on technology. It kind of made fun of how ridiculous some products were and how obsessed people are with technology. And at that point, when I realized that, I really started liking this because I got to the point of this story in that world, if that makes sense. The dialogue was really funny. That was probably my favorite part of this book. I was slightly disappointed when nothing about an asexual main character was mentioned, but I did some research and the author actually said that the main character figures out she's asexual in the 3rd book, so this is actually a series, which I didn't know. Even though I was slightly disappointed to not get anything about asexuality in this book, I am very excited to see this process of the main character realizing this. So I'm very happy that the author mentioned that it's a thing that will happen. I don't know when the 2nd book comes out, but I'm definitely gonna keep reading the series and hopefully it will be really good. I did end up enjoying this book, and I gave it 3.5 stars just because the beginning was very hard to follow. I read The Names They Gave Us by Emery Lord, and I actually received an e-arc of this through NetGalley. I received it back in March, I think, because this book came out in April. In The Names They Gave Us, we follow Lucy, who is very religious. I want to say she's Christian. And in this book, she is actually challenged in her faith when her mother is diagnosed with cancer a second time. And every summer she would join her parents at church camp, but this year her mom asks her to go to this different camp, which is across the lake. And this camp is for kids that have been through tough times, and at first Lucy doesn't want to go there because she obviously wants to spend time with her mom and be there for her. But because her mother really wants her to join there, she ends up going to this other camp. And while she's there, she rediscovers her faith and gets to know some awesome people. This story was absolutely wonderful, beautiful, heartbreaking. I cried so much. The writing was incredible, so beautiful. This book was also really diverse, which I loved. We have a black male love interest. We have other side characters that are people of color. We also have a trans girl who deals with anxiety. I loved this book to pieces. Before this, I've also read Emery Lord's When We Collided and also loved that book so much. I just love Emery Lord's writing, and I gave this 5 stars. Next, I actually buddy read a book, and that book would be Evenfall by Santino and Ais. This one. This is book 1 in the Company of Killers, or In Company of Killers series. No, I got that confused. This is book 1 in the In Company of Shadows series. This, how do I describe this? This is not a published series. The authors actually have a website where you can download it. You can't even buy it on Amazon because it's a work in progress, I guess. The series is complete, but it's just not fully edited, I guess. And the reason I wanted to read this is because it's often recommended to people that like the Foxhole Court, so obviously I had to check it out. This is a male-male romance. It's about Boyd and Sin. Sin, he's considered very dangerous. He's killed loads of people, but this agency keeps him around because he's also very good at being an agent, I guess. The agency is looking for a new partner for Sin, which is a very special process because he is the way he is. And then we have Boyd, who is the son of the highest ranking official person at this agency. Even though he has no experience at being an agent, they bring him in and put him through the process of becoming Sin's partner, which at that point I was already like, why would they bring him in when he has no experience at being an agent? Especially because Sin is known to go on random killing sprees. Yeah, so Boyd goes through this month-long process of becoming an agent, and then these two go out to go on missions. This was incredibly hard to get into. The first like 10 or 20% took me, it felt like forever. The only thing that really kept me going was Sin, because he was quite interesting and I wanted to see where this went with him being the way he is. But then we had Boyd, who was incredibly boring in the beginning. So boring. I'm sorry, but I mean, there were some reasons for why he was the way he was, but God, he was just so boring. I didn't like him at the beginning. He was very robotic and just, I couldn't find anything to connect to with him or like about him. He just seemed very distant, and I at the beginning already had a feeling that there was a reason for that because they kept referencing something, and then later on we do find out why he was that way, why he was so distant and emotionless, I guess. This book takes place a few years in the future, and there was this war. That's all I know. I don't know what kind of war. I don't know what the Earth looks like in this book. The world building was very vague because we didn't get a lot about what the world actually looks like. Well, okay, let me take that back because there was probably a lot of that in the beginning, but that was the part that I really struggled with, so I don't think a lot of that stuck in my mind. I don't know, it was just, not even just the world building that wasn't that great, but the plot was very messy as well. Also, the writing wasn't that great in my opinion, despite those things that I didn't like. Once I got to a certain point, this book got really addictive and kind of fun, and I kind of understand why it's recommended to people that like the Foxhole Court, because there are some similarities in the characters and the way they act. Evenfall is split into volume 1 and 2. I'm just gonna put this review thing together because I read both of these, and it is considered one book, but for some reason they split it into 2. That was what I had to say about volume 1, and then volume 2, they go on this mission where they go to Mexico, where they work undercover. The first quarter of that book was so much fun to read. I really enjoyed it because there was a lot of tension, but then the plot just went missing for like 3-4 chapters because of sex. And then after that, the book was just okay for me. Volume 1 took me a while to get into, but then I enjoyed the second part a lot more. And then with volume 2, I really enjoyed the beginning, and then the second part kind of lacked for me. I think that's all I have to say about this book. I gave volume 1 3.5 stars and volume 2 3 stars. I'm not sure if I'm gonna continue this series because Evenfall has been edited by the authors, but then the rest of this series hasn't been yet, so I'm not sure if I want to read unedited books. I might continue it eventually if I feel like it, but for now, I'm okay with not reading it. Also, there are quite a few trigger warnings for these books. Pretty sure they're listed on the author's website. I will link it down below if you wanna go look at that. But some trigger warnings that I wrote down while I was reading it was violence, death, sexual assault / harassment, and physical and psychological abuse. So it is quite rough to read. I also shortly want to talk about When Diplomat Rishi by Sanjay Menon. I just realized I didn't make any notes while I read this, which is very upsetting because I really enjoyed this book and I do want to talk about it, but it is going to be a bit messy. When Diplomat Rishi is about Dimple, who is about to go to Stanford because she's very interested in technology and web design and that kind of stuff. By the way, she is Indian, and her parents just want her to find the ideal Indian husband, but Dimple isn't interested in that. She just wants to go study and learn and just be independent. And then we have Rishi. Is it Rishi or Rishi? I kept saying Rishi, but I think it's Rishi. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And Rishi is a hopeless romantic. He cannot wait to get married and start a family. Dimple and Rishi's parents actually have this plan for Dimple and Rishi to get married, like an arranged marriage. And Rishi knows about this, but Dimple doesn't. And when these two go to this summer program for web design, Rishi goes up to Dimple and introduces himself as her husband, like as a joke, and she has no idea what's going on. They get to know each other during this program, and it was so incredibly sweet. I loved this book so much. Rishi is one of my new favorite characters. He was so sweet. I also loved Dimple because she was headstrong and she knew exactly what she wanted. That's all I really have to say about this. I will say that there is ableism in this book. I didn't notice it while I read it myself, but it was brought to my attention by some other people. Other than that, I thought this book was lovely, really liked the writing, it was really funny, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And some other books that I read that I'm just gonna mention: Hidden Huntress by Danielle L. Jensen. I gave this 4 stars. I listened to the audiobook of 10 Things I Can See From Here by Carrie Mack. This is a female-female romance, which I gave 4 stars. And I also listened to the audiobook of A Girl Out of Water by Laura Silverman, and I also gave that 4 stars. So those were all the books that I recently read. Tell me what you think about this mini review kind of thing. I think I'm really gonna like this format. I'm just gonna do it every few books that I read, or whenever I feel like it. Maybe I'll just do it when I read 2 books. Maybe I'll collect like 10 books to talk about. I don't know. I'm just not gonna pressure myself with this kind of stuff anymore. I would love to know what books you have recently read. Did you enjoy them? Did you read any of the books that I have read? That was it for this video, and I will see you next time. Bye! My face is so shiny, so incredibly shiny. I've been eating so much chocolate recently, and yet I still wonder why my skin is absolutely horrendous. I'm sorry. Sin is a very peculiar special secret agent thing? I can't believe I called him a thing.